This time, Porto, 2002-04. The special one announces himself.
And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a while over forever and more. And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a while over forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans debate the crucial question of who is the greatest team of all time. My name's Graham Dunn, guaranteed no Oxford United references this week, and joining me over in the data studio over there, it's Jamie Rooney.
Hey Graham, hello again. Porto, this is a really interesting one for me because, as you know, we prepare for these, which helps. Yeah, I have to say, as brilliant as this football team is, and I'm looking forward to unearthing the brilliance of this team, I couldn't find anything that really excited me on this one, to be honest. I think maybe I'm carrying over the bitterness of that European Champions League round of 16 match, and I don't think I've fully recovered from it. That's the only way I can explain it. So maybe I'm harbouring so much bitterness that this is a good opportunity once again for you to put me through the therapy of getting over such Manchester United traumas, which seem to happen every weekend at the moment.
You definitely seem in need of that. Similarly, I do kind of regret having been in Porto just a week or so ago that I didn't grill my taxi driver more on that great side. I just asked him how. He was very upbeat and talked a lot about Porto, who aren't doing brilliantly this season. I mean, you would have thought I should really have had the idea of shall we do Porto and then use that as a fact-finding mission rather than the other way around. Come back from Porto. Why don't we do that about?
When you were in Porto, Ben, did you take the opportunity to have one of those amazing sandwiches? I think they're called a franceschina, where they're full of meat, and beer. They've got fried eggs. It's just the most incredible sandwich you've ever experienced, isn't it?
It is a heart attack waiting to happen. It is quite special, isn't it? Yeah, it's really very nice, very good. So yes, that was one of the highlights of that. There's not too much sign of. I can't imagine that's in the Porto players' daily diet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it is. Before we get into the Porto side, I was going to pick up from. So it's now one of my favourite accounts on Twitter. The Goalies Are Different account. That was the one which came up with the fantastic Alan Ruff. Was the only goalkeeper in the 1978 World Cup not to wear gloves, which is an amazing fact. There was a great tweet there about who was the most travel goalkeeper, the goalkeeper who played for the most club. And of course, goalkeepers, because they have a career and then, you know, a lot of them then get sent in on like an emergency loan for a couple of games or, you know, called in as emergency backup or something like that. So Bruce Grobbelaar played for, I wasn't going to mention Oxford. Bruce Grobbelaar played for Oxford for, so, you know, these really weird kind of coincidence. But this guy, 29 clubs, played, I think mostly in the 60s, 70s, bit of the 80s. John Burridge, who played for 29 clubs. Seems possible, doesn't it?
Do you know a strange fact that stays in my head about John Burridge when he was coming towards the end of his career it must have been the mid-1990s or late 1990s. His career went on forever. So no surprise that he played for 29 clubs. He was featured, I think it was on like a Football Focus program or something like that. And he talked through his routine that he would go through when watching Match of the Day, BBC's Match of the Day, where he would actually get changed into his kit with his football boots on in his own living room to watch Match of the Day. So he'd have his gloves on, which he was one of the early adapters of goalkeeper gloves. And we talked about that last week. The innovation of goalkeeper gloves. He's got his kit on and he's got his football boots, sat there on his sofa, as the great match of the music starts to play out.
Perfectly normal. So we've been and goalkeepers are they're a bit of a theme. Well, they're a theme for every side, but they do crop up in this side. Of course, Jose Mourinho's dad was a keeper, wasn't he?
Felix, yeah, not the famous Felix from Brazil in 1970. Jose Mourinho's dad was, I don't think it was anyway, maybe. That would be a strange link. Yeah, he was a goalkeeper himself at a professional level. And I think this is where the love of football came for Jose Mourinho, who himself wanted to follow his father's footsteps into professional football, which he did, however, just wasn't particularly good at playing it.
And any other goalkeeper stats for me?
Well, I too love your goalkeepers are different Twitter account you shared with us the Alan Ruff tweet in the last couple of weeks, X or whatever they're called these days. And they've got a website as well. And it's fantastic. It's just an absolute treasure chest of information. They have a page where they talk through the history. It gives you the whole kind of history of where goalkeepers' gloves came from. And it kind of tracks it right back to the early part of football as well. The early 1900s, where potentially there were goalkeepers wearing gardening gloves to protect their hands from the cold weather, which makes perfect sense, football being a winter sport. On the page as well, they've got this fantastic little section where they've got these facts that they give you, and the Alan Ruff fact is on there. And it's headlined as a title is, "All You Need Is Gloves." I mean, what a brilliant...
Oh, it's good.
It is fantastic. It really is. And one of the facts that they list on their website is it links to a topic we had on last week's brilliant Ghana pod with Jamie Wilson, Pompey Jamie, South Coast Jamie, as you like to call him.
South Coast Jamie.
It's about football players that wear shirt numbers that don't reflect their position on the football pitch. And we talked about Asma Gyan wearing number 3 as a centre forward. So in the 1974 and 1978 World Cup, the Netherlands had a goalkeeper called Jan Youngblood, who only played 24 times for the Netherlands, and he played in 2 World Cup finals. It was pretty incredible. But he wore the number 8 shirt, and he too didn't wear any goalkeeping gloves. And if you watch YouTube videos of him, he is playing like an outfield player. This is total football. This is the Dutch team that we're yet to talk about. But he was playing as almost like your first original sweeper keeper, wearing the number 8 shirt.
It's quite a Dutch thing, isn't it? It's total football, not to be kind of restrained by old-fashioned number concepts or positional concepts. And so, yeah, I can sort of buy into that. I think that might make some sense.
Dutch confidence is certainly worth talking about.
But not this week. This week we are going to the great Porto side. Jose Mourinho, a man with a small ego, should first really announce himself. Now, it's interesting, actually. I think in my mind, I'd always thought that this was Mourinho's first job. First job management. I think my sort of shorthand history of it was that he got a job working for Barcelona as Bobby Robson's assistant and then became Porto manager. I sort of missed that. I don't know how I'd done it. Then when I read back, I think, I do remember that Bobby Robson was at Sporting Lisbon. That makes some sense. And that's when Mourinho joined his team as a translator. I completely missed that they had Bobby Robson had 2 years at Porto. I think I do kind of remember that. And then they then obviously, Mourinho follows Robson to Barcelona, takes on an increasingly prominent role in training, even more so when Robson leaves and replaced by Van Gaal. He doesn't actually, it's not Porto straight away. He actually goes to Benfica, doesn't he?
There are 2 brilliant what-ifs in the very early stages of Jose Mourinho becoming a football manager, because you're right, he goes to Benfica. He's only there for a short time. I think he arrives there in 2000. And at Benfica, slightly different to what we kind of have as custodians in the English league. In Portugal and Spain, it's very typical for presidents to be elected to run football teams. So they have to go through an election process, and part of that process is to make promises to the fans as to why they would be a worthy leader of their football team and the custodian for however long they're going to be in charge. And when Mourinho was at Benfica, the whole kind of process of the election was going on. And Manuel Villarino had made a promise that he would bring his own man in if he was to be elected the president of Benfica. He was duly elected president of Benfica. And then he got rid of José Mourinho, who'd only been there a short time, and replaced him with his own man, which kind of left José Mourinho out in the wilderness, this fledgling coach that had great promise, but because of another promise from a president to the fans, it's a brilliant what-if scenario for Benfica. If they would have stuck with José Mourinho, would they have gone on and emulated what he was to achieve at Porto and potentially win a third Champions League, as it would have been for Benfica, or first Champions League, but third European Cup? But another brilliant what-if, when Mourinho took the job at Benfica, because of his relationship with Sir Bobby Robson, who'd moved on to Newcastle, Sir Bobby Robson tried to entice José Mourinho to come and be his assistant at Newcastle United, where Bobby Robson was there in the early 2000s. And Bobby Robson did a fantastic job. This is a good Newcastle team. You've got Alan Shearer still there. They are competing in the Champions League. Bobby Robson gave him the promise that he would then retire in a year or two's time and Mourinho would succeed him. But for whatever reason, that didn't happen. But another brilliant what if. We know that Mourinho went to Chelsea and was just changed the actual face of English football. Could have gone to Newcastle a couple of years before, and maybe Newcastle could have finally won something.
I saw a quote from him saying something like he just sort of knew that 2 years down the line, Bobby Robson wasn't going to give up that dream job. It's the job he'd always wanted, which is probably right. It's interesting again. So, as you say, it's a very short period at Benfica, and I think as part of that, Mourinho also, asked for a long-term contract with them, because he's doing quite well there. So you've already got some of the classic Mourinho plays. He's not short of confidence that he's doing a good job. He then joins another club which I'd never heard of, a Portuguese side, which I'm going to struggle to even pronounce it. That was good. That was really good.
I took a confidence player
who aren't a team that's really been on the international map, I guess, but they're having quite something of a sweet spot in their history in the Portuguese league, and they are there or thereabouts in the top part of the league. I think when Mourinho takes them over, they might be fifth, and then these are really only I think he manages 8 or 9 games at Benfica, 25 or something at that team I'm not going to attempt to pronounce as flourishingly as you did. And then Porto come calling. And Porto, it feels like there's 3 big teams in Portuguese football. Sporting Lisbon, Benfica, another Lisbon. And Porto, relatively, perhaps not quite as big.
You're absolutely right. It is a league dominated by those 3 teams. And to kind of give it some context, the Portuguese league started just after the Second World War. Only 5 teams have ever won the Portuguese top division. And only on 2 occasions has it not been either Benfica, who have won the most, Porto won the second most, and Sporting Lisbon, who won the third most. It's completely... I know when you get like a Bayern Munich situation, it's called a monopoly. And if you get a Glasgow Celtic situation, it's called a duopoly. Graham, as the professional journalist, when 3 teams dominate, is it a triopoly?
Triopoly? Is it a thruple? I think that's something else. A triopoly? A triple? This is a good question. I'll have the answer next week.
I don't think there's another football league in the world like the Portuguese league. We're used to teams dominating. But even Scotland is an example. Since the Second World War, they've had 9 or 10 different champions. Hearts, Hibernian, even Kilmarnock have won a championship in Scotland in that period. In Portugal, it's 5 teams. Boa Vista have 1 title. Belenenses, I'm not sure. That's it. They also have a title, but that was in the 1940s, the late 1940s.
Porto becomes Mourinho's chance. We know he's got a lot of ambition, and we know he's got a lot of self-belief. But this becomes his chance to have a springboard into success. I mean, it is fair to say, in the 2 years he's there, it's quite a good performance, isn't it?
It's incredible. He arrives in the January of 2002, and absolutely, your point about his experience is light. His top flight game time, I think, is no more than 33, 34 games when he arrives at Porto. But I think there's been eyes on Mourinho for some time. I think there is a feeling that this guy is the special one. So I think there was a feeling that this guy was a bit different and was worth investing in. So when he gets to Porto, it's not any great surprise. I think he's been handpicked by the president because there's an idea that this is the guy that can get Porto back on track. Because when he took over Porto, they were languishing fifth, which doesn't sound bad. But when you're FC Porto and the lowest finish you've ever had in the history of your football team is ninth, fifth is a crisis.
Fifth, when there have only ever been 5 title winners, fifth isn't great.
No, they're in a crisis. And Unai Delera actually above Porto when Mourinho was appointed. So he is doing such a good job that he's taken this unfancied small team that don't normally play in the top flight, but having a good spell in the top flight, are above the massive FC Porto at this particular moment. And when Mourinho comes in, I think he spends the time just getting a feel for Porto. And the brilliant thing I love about his appointment is the first statement, the first promise he makes to the fans is that we'll win the league next year. And it's not even lightly said. It's we're going. I'm here. Don't worry, we're going to win the league next year. And he's not even joking.
It is extraordinary. I mean, we did the Scotland 1978 pod, World Cup side, on the pod a couple of weeks ago, and Andy McLeod had a similar sort of level of confidence. But it's one thing to say it; it's another thing to sort of walk the walk or talk the talk. It's kind of quite something, doesn't it? And his record there is just unreal. So it kind of that first season ends that they win something like 15 out of 17, 19 or something. As a very strong run to get them into third. That gets them kind of well set up for the following season. It gets them into the UEFA Cup. win the Portuguese league then, and the UEFA Cup, then and win the Portuguese league the following year and the Champions. I mean, it is an extraordinary thing, and it is putting it into perspective. Is that this dominance and achievement wasn't just within Portugal? It is the European achievements, isn't it?
Just to have some context, we'll jump forward to the European Cup. Obviously, we can discuss it in a bit more finer detail, but in the last 28 years of the European Cup, other than Porto, it's been won by a team from the top 4 leagues. So Italy, England, Spain and Germany have dominated the European Cup. Italy with 4 titles, Germany with 4 titles, Spain with 12, England with 7. The only one that stands out in that 28-year period, and this is obviously going back to the mid-1990s, is Porto. Porto at the time wasn't even like a top 5 European league. Porto as a league wasn't particularly fancied strongly at that point. I think it was ranked in the UEFA coefficient 8th or 9th in European football. So it's unimaginable now that a team outside those top 4 would win not completely unimaginable. You've got Paris Saint-Germain, who seem to be chucking everything they can to win it. But even with unlimited resources, and Mourinho had no resources at FC Porto, absolutely none. With unlimited resources, Paris Saint-Germain are unable to win the Champions League. And in 2004, when Mourinho and his Porto team won the Champions League, it was in full flow. You had 4 teams qualifying from England on a regular basis, 4 from Spain. So it already shaped itself into the tournament that we know now in terms of the Champions League.
Obviously, we did. I'm not going to spend the entire pod name checking previous ones that we've recently done as well. But obviously, we did Olympic Marseille not that long ago, and one of the striking things there was the teams that they were up against. which have nothing compared, because you were at that stage, you were at the stage of having just the league winners. You almost by definition, there'll be one or two of the traditional big sides wouldn't have made it through. At this stage, you're absolutely right. When you look at the teams that are in the last 32 or last 16 or whatever it is, they're proper names in there. Porto get a relatively generous run through, I think, of United's quite a tough draw, but they avoid some of the other bigger guns, I guess. Although we can, I don't know whether we should do this now or should do that in a bit, but it's definitely puts into context the achievement. I think what the other bit that you talked about, which is resources and money compared to, and it is fascinating when you look at that team that he guided there. You've got some well-established Portuguese players, or players who subsequently become quite well known to us, mostly because they ended up at Chelsea. Actually, it isn't a hugely established team, and he doesn't go out and buy a huge number of players, does he?
He brings in key players. Mourinho understood the nature of the task. There were no resources, so he's looking for hard-working, talented players that are going to fit and work within his structure. Because Mourinho, and we probably should spend some time on the fact that Mourinho was a master tactician and his preparation was incredible. Lots of things about him was incredible. But what he does in his first summer, so after he spent the first 5 or 6 months securing third place in his first half season, he then goes out and he gets a couple of fullbacks, Paulo Ferreira, who plays at right back and plays pretty much every game. And he is one of the ones that will move on to Chelsea when Mourinho moves on to Chelsea. He also brings on Nuno Valente, a left back for £500,000 from his previous club, Lira. So, he's got that familiarity baked in. And fullbacks to Mourinho are incredibly important. So he sets his team out in a 4-4-2, but it's a diamond in midfield that almost becomes a kind of a 4-3-1-2, which is a wonderful formation and shape. And the formation is incredibly important to Mourinho as well. He knows that he has to focus on making sure the formation is everything. So he's got these two incredible wing-backs he's brought in. He also brings in Dunn, the Brazilian central forward, who he had at his previous club, Lira as well. And on a free transfer, he brings in Manish, which is a really important central midfielder to bring in. And there's a few others that he brings in his first season as well that absolutely contribute to the brilliance. One that doesn't play that much at all, but we're all familiar with, Nuno Espirito Santo, now managing in Saudi Arabia, but obviously he's another goalkeeper. I don't know what number he wore, but he was actually the most expensive signing that he brought in his first full season. So he spent €3 million on Nuno Santo and as backup to the great Victor Ba.
You talk about that formation, the 4-4-2. Obviously, it does. If you're going to play a diamond, it does help if you've got Deco at the tip of the diamond, doesn't it?
He's wonderful. He's everything I love about football. He's everything I wanted to be when playing football. You want the ball all the time. You want everything to work around you. You're responsible for creating everything that's positive in terms of the output of the team. Deco is a wonderful, wonderful footballer, and having him playing at the top of that diamond in the hole behind two central attackers, two centre forwards, which is brilliant. Bring back two centre forwards. It works exceptionally well when you've got this diminutive, wonderful, pre-Messi Messi in Deco.
Absolutely. I mean, really special player. And rewatching the highlights of the UEFA Cup final win against Celtic, and it's like a Deco showreel. Yeah, it's actually in the game. It's kind of just a thing of beauty, isn't it? I guess that is the probably one of the things about Mourinho. I mean, defensively minded, very strong defensive. Is he a boring coach?
I think this is a topic that really divides opinion because he's pragmatic. But his teams, if you look at his teams, they don't concede a lot of goals, but they do score goals. So in his first full season in 2000 and 2003, they score 60 goals. They only concede 22. Is Mourinho boring? I don't think he's boring. I think he's functional, and he played within the resources of what he had at this particular moment. It's not like when he went to Chelsea and he had Abramovich throw in as much money as he wanted to spend. So what he's doing, he's maximising the potential. So what he does, he creates a solid core, a strong defensive structure with his two centre backs, the wing backs that are the full backs that are responsible for the wing play, and then you've got this solid midfield, this three in midfield, and Costinha is the defensive midfielder in that particular block that makes the team function. And Mourinho was one of the first coaches I can remember who actually talked about transitions. In English football, a transition was something that you attached to the word radio and took to games when you didn't have smartphones. But Mourinho would talk about transitions as like a really key part of the game. It wasn't about defence and just attack. It was about the transition. There's this third phase of play. And Mourinho was always focused on that transition between defence and attacks when you haven't got the ball and you do have the ball. And I think because of that, he was able to maximise the best out of his players because he and what he did with training as well. It's fantastic because, players wouldn't train just to go through routines and rigour in terms of learning stuff. He would emulate game situations in training. So the players were getting fit, but they were doing things that they were going to be expected to do in a game as well. So he was preparing his team for the eventuality of being in scenarios where he could maximise winning these football matches.
I mean, that's the bit I quite like about this part of the story is that it's original and fresh Mourinho. It's before he becomes something of a sort of a parody of himself to some extent in terms of one thing or another. And it is that it's difficult to then relive how different, innovative he was as a coach, and the players were enamoured with it. I think they were genuinely excited to be working, that a truly exciting time. And then when you look at the results, the ease with which they won the titles, for example. I mean, I think in the 02-03 season, it's a record points tally, isn't it?
86, yeah, it's a record at that time. It has been beaten since.
Then the following year, I don't think they don't lose until April, from the start. I think it's kind of
27 games unbeaten. They lose to Vicente, and by that point, the league is already in their hands, and it's going to take something monumental not to win. I mean, just go back to Mourinho and your point about his kind of instilling into players. I think we've talked about this before when we did the Inter Milan team, his Inter Milan team that won the treble. We did that with the great Matt Lee. If you remember, we talked about the wonderful Wesley Sneijder, who, a fantastic player, who was quoted as saying that he would kill and die for Jose Mourinho. And I think Sammy West said something else. So what he's got something in terms of his man management qualities. And I think he developed these with working with Paul Robson and working with Louis van Gaal. He instills a sense of loyalty. I think crucially as well, this period of time, there are two factors. One, he's 38 years old when he takes over Porto. So he's a young guy in football management coaching terms. He's a young guy. So he's got that youthful energy to want to do well. Plus the fact he's never really spoke about this because I don't think his ego allows him. But he didn't really play football. He played mostly for his dad's team. So there's a level of nepotism there in terms of is he being picked on his qualities or is he being picked because his dad's just protecting him? So maybe there was always this feeling in Mourinho that he was motivated to prove himself that I couldn't play it, but just because I couldn't play it doesn't mean I can't coach it. So I think being young, 38, in the context of Football Manager, and not having a football background, I think were brilliant motivators for Mourinho to show the world that he deserves his place at the top table and he will be one of the greatest managers of all time.
I think that is a factor there, isn't it? And as you say, the age is intriguing. I think that's part of I think it's been part of an era, in fact, where young managers are sort of a trend towards that. I think probably more at ease with the players that they're working with. 2 Portuguese leagues, you've got Portuguese cups as well. You have the UEFA Cup win in 02-03. That final against Celtic does, there's a real sort of drama around that game. And that's sort of a drama that stays with Mourinho arguably throughout everything he does. There's an element to which the more dramatic, the closer it is, the more he kind of thrives in it.
Yeah, I think he loves it. I think anything that gives him attention, whether it's positive or negative, I think he loves it. And we know now that Mourinho has been caught up in a whole manner of episodes where he's been the focal point for the right reasons, the wrong reasons. But I think he loves the spotlight. And I think it goes back to what we were just talking about with the team spirit. I think because he does foster a strong team spirit. So I think he would quite happily deflect attention away from the team in order to put focus on himself. And I think that's his relationship with the media as well. I think he just has that brilliant relationship with handling the media. So yeah, in the final with Celtic, which went to extra time, for all of its profile, the spotlight's on Mourinho.
Yeah, so that Celtic game was highly impressive. So that's 2-2 after full time. A couple of Henrik Larsson goals for Celtic keeps them in there. You have the great artist Deco pulling the strings to make it 2-2, and then in extra time, it's the sending off for what can only be described as a slightly tired challenge from Balde for Celtic, and obviously against 10 men, Porto go ahead and win the cup. And that, UEFA Cup kind of announces yourself on the international stage. I suppose really the point at which José really announces himself is the following season in the Champions League, and having progressed out of the group, tough group actually. They finished second to Real Madrid, and Madrid, the only side to beat them that year. They end up drawing the mighty Man United.
They did. But to kind of set a bit more context before we get to therapy session, we've all talked about the achievement of Porto winning the Champions League in this particular season and breaking the mould of the top 4 leagues, always winning it, is incredible. But there were some brilliant teams in this tournament at this particular version of the Champions League. Real Madrid, who they do lose to in their very first game, and this is Real Madrid at its prime Galacticos. I mean, this is Zidane, Ronaldo, Beckham, Figo, Roberto Carlos. This is absolutely prime Galacticos Real Madrid. And Real Madrid themselves had been winning Champions Leagues in the last few years. They've also got AC Milan and Juve, the two teams that contested the final previous season. They've got a Manchester United team that's strong, but definitely going through a transition. You've got Chelsea with its investment from Abramovich in this tournament, and you've got some pretty decent sides as well, unfamiliar sides like this young Monaco team that reached the final, managed by the brilliant Didier Deschamps, that are also lighting up the tournament. And also a team that Porto have to face in the quarterfinals, Olympique Lyonnais of France. This is when Olympique Lyonnais were winning the French league every single season. I think they did 6 or 7 league championships in a row. They would get into the quarterfinals of the Champions League on a routinely basis. So they were one of the top teams in Europe at this particular period. So for Porto, it wasn't like it was an opportunity where teams were on a slide. There were still brilliant teams in this tournament. It just happens that the draw opened up a little bit for Porto, but they still had to do a lot of hard work. So the first game is played at the Dragão in Porto. United go 1-0 up. Quinton Fortune scores. I think it's a kind of rebounded free kick, and he's there to put it away. Benny McCarthy, who is now at Manchester United as a striker coach.
How's that working out?
7 goals in 7 league games currently tells me that he's got some work to do. He equalises in the first half, and then Porto get a late-ish one. Benny McCarthy again, a brilliant header. He kind of rises between Neville and Brown, who a ball flights in. He's kind of one of those brilliant headers where the ball's going direct to goal. McCarthy is running towards the corner flag on the edge of the box, and he has to rise. He gets between Brown and Neville, and the header is beautifully deflected in off the crossbar, beating Tim Howard. So the 2-1 up, and then in the final moments of the game, quite a critical thing happens. Roy Keane gets a red card, which means that will not be available in the second game, and will be replaced by Cameroon's Eric Djemba.
Yeah, Roy Keane getting himself suspended for key Man United games in Europe is something of a theme. It does seem to be emerging here. So this sets up the return leg at Old Trafford, and Man United would remain favourites to overturn a 1-goal advantage, especially when Paul Scholes puts them ahead in the first half of the second game. And I mean, I don't really remember it looking as though Porto were going to overturn it. I mean, again, Mourinho keeps it tight, doesn't he? He keeps Porto in the game.
Yeah, I mean, his style is counter-attacking. It's to defend at all costs and look for the opportunities in the wide areas to counter. Something does happen, and this is where football fate just deals its way. So Scholes scored off an O'Shea assist, and then on the stroke of half-time, O'Shea is in the penalty box. He plays the ball into Paul Scholes, who's on the edge of the 6-yard box. Paul Scholes controls and puts it away, and it's 2-0. Yeah, the linesman has ruled it out for the linesman. The assistant referee has ruled it out for offside. And I'm not even saying this as kind of a bitter red. It's offside. It wasn't offside at the time. Paul Scholes is being played on by at least 3 Porto players. So how the linesman has seen this as offside, even in slow motion, it doesn't look offside. So it's a bizarre decision. It's a key decision because I think if United go 2-0 in at half time, the whole game is changed. And Porto then are faced where they have to get a goal back to take it to extra time. And they did get a goal. But I think the whole nature of the game has changed, and Ferguson will probably make different substitutions. So it's a critical moment, and it's a key moment for Jose Mourinho in his quest for European glory.
Maybe the linesman, when he put his flag up, meant check complete.
Yeah. I mean, if I existed then, it would have been a goal. Absolutely.
It would be a goal. Well, I wouldn't bet on it. So yes, it all sets it up, and we get towards the end of the game, and there's a free kick which Tim Howard doesn't have the greatest effort at. Ball comes out, and is it Costa Gana who gets stuck on?
Yeah, Costina is a defensive midfielder, a guy whose job it is to protect the midfield and defence, who does chip in with the odd goal. And it's late in the game. It is the 90th minute. It's literally the dying part of the game. And Tim Howard doesn't present himself in glory. He does flap at it, unfortunately. He flaps it right back into play, and Costina has a fairly simple task of just making sure the ball's on target, which he does. And then we see an incredible celebration.
Yeah, I mean, it's late enough in the game for Mourinho to have the confidence that celebration, a bit like the Alan Pardew West Ham Cup final dance, isn't going to come back to haunt him. And he definitely enjoys it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I mean, he has to. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with Old Trafford, but the manager bench, they're a brick wall, and they're built up in the halfway line. So they're elevated, there's a staircase, and then there's quite a wide technical area. So to get from your seat where he is to the pitch, it's not something you can do quickly. It's going to take you a good shuffling around, making sure you're not bumping into people. So as glorious as it is running down the touchline, I mean, his players are already in the corner flag by the time he's actually got on the pitch. So he's joining in with the celebrations, but the celebrations started a long time before he even started getting down.
Joking aside, I mean, I'm obviously enjoying putting you through the ringer of having to remember all of this again. But to most people's mind, that is really, for all the success Mourinho had before that was, and within football, he's certainly been highly well regarded and thought of by them. But that's the bit that brings him to the public attention. It's
Manchester United, it's England, so it's going to get press attention. And I mean, Mourinho was already a fairly well-known coach because of what he'd done the previous year, winning the UEFA Cup with Celtic and the way he'd won championships quite quickly. But yeah, I mean, this really elevates him to a new height. And I think there was a very ambitious Russian owner not that far away down in London that was probably taking a note thinking if my man Ranieri doesn't come up with the goods this year, then maybe this man Mourinho could be our leader.
That is the last 16. That's still in the last. There are still 3 more games to win to win the tournament.
You look at the teams they played now in the quarterfinal, semi-final, and the final, and you could probably be dismissive that Porto had it quite easy, but they really didn't. Olympique Lyonnais they were a serious team. I mean, they had Michael Essien playing, they had Juninho, the free kick specialist, playing there, Joao Malouda, Sidney Govou. This was a very good Lyon team that were used to winning. Head coach Paul Aguirre was pretty much prime at that particular moment as well. He was, being sought after by Europe's top clubs as well. So to get through the quarterfinal against Lyon was no mean feat. And then they're faced with Deportivo La Coruña in the semi-final. And again, you probably look on paper and you think, well, what is a team from northern Spain doing in the Champions League semi-finals? Deportivo La Coruña had knocked out Juventus in the round of 16, the previous season's runners-up. And then in the quarter-final, they have one of the most incredible football comebacks in Champions League history. They've been beaten 4-1 by the defending champions, AC Milan, in the first leg. Nobody has given them a hope and a prayer for the second leg, yet they turn it around. It's a very famous 4-0 win and one of the most famous comebacks in football history, I think.
Unbelievable result, and Milan would have had to be PSG-like to throw that one away from that position. So as you say, Deportivo, a decent side. I don't remember too much about the semi-final. Just looking at it doesn't stand out as a thriller. 0-0 first leg, 1-0 second leg. Perhaps Mourinho's defensive qualities coming through there, but it gets Porto through to the Champions League final. Porto have won won the European Cup before, haven't they? Is that right?
Yeah, they won it in 87, excuse me. So they have pedigree. Portuguese teams do. Benfica have won it twice before. So, Portuguese has a history of success. They're a very important football nation. Fallen off the radar a little bit in the last 20 years. But yeah, Porto and Benfica are definitely 2 big teams that have won previously the Europe's top competition.
And so they end up in the final against Monaco. Monaco, impressive performance along the way, having knocked out just Real Madrid and Chelsea. Decent side.
Yeah, absolutely. And scoring goals for fun as well. And in the group stage, they smashed Deportivo La Coruña 8-3. So they've smashed 8 goals past La Coruña, who Porto have just beaten 1-0 on aggregate over 2 games in the semi-finals. So this is a good Didier Deschamps Monaco team, which he's kind of created out of nothing because they were close to kind of financial bankruptcy the season before. But he's, as we've seen with Didier Deschamps, he's a very gifted manager. Anyone who gets to a World Cup final twice is seriously doing something good. And this was one of his early managerial jobs. So you've got 2 young managers going head to head in a Champions League where at the start of the season, Monaco was 66-1 to win the tournament and FC Porto were 50-1 to win the tournament. So neither of these 2 teams were fancied by English bookmakers as it stood at the beginning of the tournament, yet both of them went to the final.
At the time, it's quite refreshing and exciting, whereas, I suspect now if you were to say you're going to pit a Mourinho side versus a Deschamps side in the final or something, you might choose to watch something else instead.
Yeah, what's on BBC 4?
As you say, the story of this game is really a sort of classic Mourinho defensively strong, counter-attacking performance, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he sets his team out. I don't think there was any doubt in Mourinho's head that he wasn't going to win this football match. I think he's famed for his meticulous planning. I think, this attention to detail. And part of that attention to detail is to analyse his opponents extensively. And another signing that he brought in the 2003-2004 season would go on and become a student of the game, Andre Villas-Boas, who'd come as
Oh, of
a player,
course.
didn't really play any games, but was in the squad and was tasked with the responsibility as part of the playing staff to analyse and to bring details. So Mourinho had a wide network of people that were supporting him to give him as much detail as he could on his opponent. So I don't think in Jose Mourinho's head there was any doubt. I think if you'd have asked him, I can't remember the pre-game stuff, but I'm sure he would have been as close to 100% confident that his team were going to win this by the sheer nature of how he sets his team out and his attention to detail in terms of his planning.
And when they do, almost comfortable 3-0 in the end, with our man Deco amongst the scorers again. Always impressed. That completes this extraordinary, in fact, extraordinary achievements for Mourinho at Porto, and that was almost the ultimate. That season was almost the ultimate season for them, wasn't it? They almost win. They win 3 trophies, and they win 2. They win another one of the Portuguese Cups, and miss out on in the final of one of them. I think, is that right?
Yeah. So they win the league with 86 points. They concede only 19 goals. They keep 20 clean sheets. They win the Champions League, and in the domestic cup, they go to the semi-finals. I think they lose to Benfica. Can't remember. Win the Super Cup, the showpiece European competition, and then they go on, albeit after Mourinho, because Mourinho moves on to Chelsea, and they win the Intercontinental Cup, the World Club Cup.
But they, as you say, they do it without Mourinho. Chelsea come calling, a host of top football league clubs around the world continue to come calling. He continues to be an unbelievable draw wherever he goes. What's kind of the impact for Porto after this? I imagine they remain one of the top 5 within the Portuguese league.
They're secure in the top 3, but they don't defend their title. They come second in the Premier Portuguese League. They go out in the last 16 of the Champions League, and they're not the same team. Mourinho's taken a few players with him to Chelsea. They've lost Mourinho. I think they go through 2 or 3 managers as well the following year. So clearly replacing Mourinho is a problem for them. And at that point, it's going to be a problem for any football team. Just kind of a fact on that, because we talked about the big 3, this incredible situation. Do you know, there's only ever been 8 players in the history of Portuguese football that played for Benfica, FC Porto, and Sporting Lisbon. It's very uncommon that you would have a player that will play for all 3 teams. There are 2 players in Mourinho's 2003-2014. You've got Delay, and also you've got Maniche as well. So you've got 2 of the 8 were playing in Jose Mourinho's team. Only 8 players to play for these 3 teams.
Wow.
The history of Portuguese football.
When you look at that story, you do look at the defence, you look at the structure of it, you look at Deco. The other thing which is worth referencing is the bizarre bringing back on loan from, of all teams, Charlton.
Yeah, George Costa. He's coming towards the end of his career. He's gone out on loan of Charlton Athletic. And again, that may seem a strange thing, but Charlton were actually flying high in the English Premier League at this particular moment. Alec Kirbyshly was...
This is Kirbyshly?
Yeah. You know, Charlton were regularly finishing in the top 10. So it's not, at that particular moment in time, it's not particularly strange that an established Portuguese player in the top 5 will go on loan to Charlton Athletic in the English Premier League. But yeah, Mourinho brings it back. So he brings it back in the summer of his first full season. And George Costa and Ricardo Carvalho form a very crucial and important centre-back pairing.
Listen, Jamie, as you've referenced previously, we're living in a world where Alan Simonsen played for Charlton. As far as I'm concerned, literally anyone could have played for Charlton. Alan Simonsen, I think former European Player of the Year, was playing for Charlton. Just so, in that context, I think absolutely anyone could be playing there. We should probably stop diving down Charlton Athletic rabbit holes, and we should start putting this team in its place and in the world of greatness. We, of course, have 5 categories of greatness, from all-time greats to true greats. Touch of greatness in the middle, to our second from bottom category, edge of greatness, and a blink of greats. Jamie, what are you thinking about this side?
Well, I'm thinking this is more about the coach than it is about the team. Now, the team is a brilliant collective of players, but as we've already spoken about, there are no outstanding world superstars. They're very good players in their own right, and they're fairly well known, and a lot of them go on and continue to have successful careers. I think we're talking more about Jose Mourinho. So the achievements for Porto are fantastic. Winning the Champions League, winning UEFA Cup. That doesn't happen very often. I think Liverpool did it in the 70s, but I may be wrong. I kind of want to be wrong. But I don't think anyone else in European football has done that since Porto did it when they won the UEFA Cup and also the Champions League the following season. They've won championships in Portugal, which, when you're one of 3 teams, there's always a chance you're going to win it, right? But Benfica are the big team. They are the force. And, that is the classico between Benfica and Porto. Yeah, so Mourinho, a brilliant coaching style at Porto. He has completely shown himself to the world. Brilliant leadership, great motivational skills, an incredible unyielding desire to win. And his achievements with Porto really did lay the foundation for what he went on to achieve with Chelsea and Real Madrid and Inter Milan. So as much as I think I want to rank this Portugal team in the very top bracket of all-time greats, I'm going to go down the bracket and put them as true greats.
I am quite torn. I'm weirdly very attached to this story, even though it's not in itself. They're a team of moments rather than, a team that really took the dominated and would be in that all-time greats category. I think it's really interesting that Mourinho has over that course of that year, he has a win ratio of 71.6, and that's only across, this is a man who's largely had a very good win ratio across his career everywhere. That's only bettered by a fraction 71.9 at Real Madrid. But that is Real Madrid. Real Madrid should win a lot of their games. A lot of their games in Europe, a lot of their games within the Spanish league. You can almost make a case for Porto being, this particular Porto and this team being the all-time greats of underdogs. But is that quite enough? Just don't think. I would love them to be there when we finally wrap all this up and we have our big, and we're getting all the teams together. We're going to have a big playoff. They're all going to play each other in the game, and we're going to put all the teams in the all-time greats together. And Pele's there with his Brazil 70s, and you've got Brian Clough's Nottingham Forest there. All in position. I would love to see Porto in there just for what Mourinho would do, and he would probably get there. But that's wishful thinking. I don't think I can push them quite into all-time greats. I think I might be inclined to go true greats. I don't know. Have I convinced you?
You were convincing me into all-time greats. You really were. You had me on your political bandwagon, and I was thinking, I've got this all wrong. And then you go and knock yourself out of it at the end.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
Stupid. I should have shown Mourinho like self-belief, and just with it, I should have begun the podcast by saying, this side are going to be all-time greats. Now let's have the next hour.
They are the special one. Yeah, I am really torn. I kind of feel that I don't think there's no conviction in my true greats, and that's why I think I was being swayed by all-time greats. I mean, when you pair them up against the teams that we put in there, and let's not forget, Nottingham Forest, rightly so, are in there. And they're in there because they won the European Cup, albeit twice, when the European Cup was a lot easier to win than what it is when Porto won it. Yeah, I think we're trying to talk ourselves into FC Porto being all-time greats and talk ourselves out of putting them in the true greats brackets, I guess. Which is brilliant for me because, as you know, on these things that you have the final say and the final word, and that's a responsibility I don't want.
I have reinvigorated belief and self-confidence in this. I say, José Mourinho's Porto, all-time greats. So we have one last bit of business. You should probably do a time machine for this one. Jamie, where do you want to go?
I think I'd go back to Porto quite happily because it's a beautiful city. And I think I'd only have half of the Francesina and not a full one because that was a mistake that I would like to rectify.
It definitely sat heavy.
Yeah, I mean, I had mine about 4 years ago and I think I can still feel it there now. So it's really unusual. And this kind of like, I'm ending it how I started it. There is nothing for me that stands out. I don't really have a moment that I would return back to. So I'm kind of leaning on you to think, well, if you've got a moment, then maybe I can just piggyback onto your time machine. I mean, it'd be great to go to Gelsenkirchen and in the final, even if I learn to pronounce the city of Gelsenkirchen, which I've never been able to pronounce yet. And when UEFA awarded the final to Gelsenkirchen, I was absolutely terrified because it did look like they could go there, and I was worried I might have to say that more than I had done. Which I've said it more now than I've said it in my lifetime and still pronounce it incorrectly.
Well, if you're going to piggyback a lift there, it seems cruel to take you to Old Trafford. So I think I go to Seville for the UEFA Cup final, which I think as a game is a better, more dramatic one than any of them. I mean, Mourinho's too. It is the problem with this. They are too well drilled. They win well, and we become used to it once they. But I think at that the UEFA Cup with Celtic would be the one. Excellent. Okay, we should leave it there. Jamie, thank you for your time again.
Cheers, Graham. That was a good one. I never felt more outside my comfort zone on doing FC Porto than I've ever felt doing these things.
Well, you and me both. I burned up my Oxford United reference in the first 2 minutes, so I had nowhere to go. So that's all we have time for. As a quick reminder, you can subscribe to the podcast and you get a new one every Thursday. And we would like to hear from you if you have any other comments about the podcast or teams you think we should talk about or follow. And we will speak again soon.